What's goody, Hot Breathiverse? Welcome back to Hot Breath Live, your weekly comedy tune-up. I am your host, comedian Joel Byers. My co-host Yoshi So is on family vacation, but fear not, we have the perfect co-host today. His sketch comedy group, Whitest Kids U Know, probably the pioneers of internet sketch comedy. They were doing this before YouTube and then turned to friends hanging out, writing sketches into TV shows, a cult following, and much more we're going to get into today. So please, hot brethren and sister, and welcome to the Hot Breathiverse. The one, the only, Sam Brown, everyone. Welcome, Sam.
Oh, wow. That's a crowded room you got there. Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, I love sketch comedy, and it's a topic we don't talk about that much in here. And I know before the show we were saying, all comedy, learning all the skills help the other. But just to kind of kick it off here, when it comes to sketch comedy, how do you kind of know what ideas to pursue? It's kind of like with stand up. A lot of the times we're looking for, okay, what's a funny moment in life, or what is something I'm emotionally connected to that angers me or confuses me that I want to find the funny in. And in sketch comedy, is there like, do you find the parallel there, or how have you, because you do it at the highest level. So I'm here to learn, basically.
Well, I mean, like anything, it is a thing of like you're throwing a lot of ideas at the wall. And, like the ideas that succeed are the ideas that succeed, the ideas that make it through all the rounds of like you pitch the ideas, and then you go through the ideas you pitched and go like, I like this, I don't like this, and then you go, all right, like this is the idea we're going to go with, and then you write up the draft, and then you critique that first draft, and then you do the rewrites, and then hopefully it's funny enough to put on its feet, and then like after that, because with Whitest Kids, we were a college group, and we were kind of typical, like, hey, we just want to have friends kind of college sketch group, and there was like 11 people in it, and we did it all throughout college, and towards the end of college had this sort of realization that, like, all right, if we want to be like serious about this and like be committed to this, it needs to be like a more focused thing with a more uh like concise idea of like a more of a concise voice. And so that's we kind of evolved into the smaller group.
Mm-hmm.
And for like 5 months we were like just like doing like stand-up shows. We were the assholes being like, all right, that was a great sketch comedian or great stand-up comedian, now you guys all have to watch our little plays. um I know what you guys. I know what everyone wants to do is change gears in the middle of this show.
Right, right.
Uh, and then we had this opportunity to do a weekly show in the Lower East Side, and we were like, we gave them a tape of ours with all these sketches, and the people at this bar were like, looked at the tape, and they were like, I don't fucking care if this is good or not. I just want to know, can you fill the room every week? And we were
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, which is like the what I consider the smartest, dumbest thing we ever said in the Whitest Kid's career, because like it was a huge opportunity for us to do that much work, but we did not realize how much work it would be. And so we were like every week, like if you're a stand up, you can like go up every week and be like, well, this is kind of a funny idea. Let me like say this for the 3 minutes in between these two comedians and talk about it and hear it and think about if that's something I connect to, and use that as an opportunity for me to do. And that's like, just, that's the rhythm of it. But if you're a sketch comedian doing sketch every week, you're like, you do your sketches and you want people to come back, and you realize you have to do new sketches. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to write new sketches every week. And we didn't write 100% new sketches, but we would write like at least three. It'd be like three would be like a more like slow week of new stuff, and like like 8 would be a good week, great week of
Wow.
new sketches. And then, like if we were like kind of tapped out, we would be like, hey, let's just do like a greatest hits of, like favorites from the past, 6 months or so. But yeah, for like 3 years before we had a TV show, we were doing live shows in the Lower East Side every week, and just the ideas that when we wrote the first season of the show, we wrote it in a weekend,
Hmm.
and 90% of it was just the stuff that we'd already written for our live show. And it was literally like sitting down, making a stack of note cards of the sketches we wanted that we did live that we thought we could do for the TV show, then going through that and realizing we had too many, and then making the cuts, and then being like, all right, first season's done. Making a show's easy. Uh, but that's but that's because we had years of like writing these and then performing them, and then being like, oh, well, that joke didn't hit. Let's like cut that out of it the next time we do that sketch, and working it out the way a stand up would work out a special or something. And yeah, I think like for a sketch group, we were very not sketch like, because like there was a couple other sketch groups that we were kind of like contemporaries with, like Old English and Harvard Sailing Team, and like that were like around,
I remember.
like but for the most part, we were just hanging out with all the stand ups. And Pianos was a club where there was no backstage, so we would do the show like an improv show where we would be on the stage the whole time. But that again is an amazing learning experience, because if you're doing a show where you're like changing costumes and all that, you're on stage for your parts, and then when you're done with your parts, you're off stage. But like we were watching every second of every show we did, because we were like just on stage for all of it. And if we weren't in the sketch, we were just kind of turned away, like backlining it. Um,
Were there any
yeah.
epic bombs? Because, like,
Oh,
what's some of your worst bombs?
yes. I mean, we we had shows that were. I mean, like that's one thing. If you're doing sketches every week, you got to learn that, like, hey, sometimes you're gonna miss. I mean, I read this book called The Power of Habit, and there's something really interesting about it, about like habit creation, and about like the things that it takes to to like create a habit, and like put that something in that like habitual part of your brain. And I was thinking about the shows we would do, and it was like, oh, this checks off all of that, because it's like we would do it every week. um it like wasn't a question of us like, hey, should we do it this week? Should we not do it? It was like, no, we're meeting Saturday and Sunday. I just don't have to think about it. Same place every week. And then one of the big things is that if like you to create a habit, you need some sort of like reward system.
Mm.
And for us, it was like if we did our show on Sunday nights in New York, and we were you know a group of five alcoholics who didn't like their 9 to 5 jobs that much. So it was like if we had a good show, people would want to hang out and party and drink. If we had a bad show, people would, like go home early. And we definitely had a number of bombs. The one in particular that I think of, and this isn't fair of me because this isn't my bomb. Definitely like had some huge bombs. But the one I can think of that like Trevor and Darren were insistent, like this is going to be so funny. This sort of notorious bomb was they had this sketch idea called Too Many Cats, where it was two people, like a guy hanging out with another guy in an apartment, and every step he took, someone would be on the mic in the back going, "Meow, meow." Like so, like every movement, it would be as if they were in the house with too many cats. and that was the entire sketch. But yeah,
No,
yeah.
no response. Like it never
No, the
worked.
audience was just
Oh,
like, no, like
he's like,
this
what? You're
is
killing? You're stepping on cats? What?
this is very stupid. No, but I think in sketch you kind of have to have that kind of attitude of like, all right, this the crowd is either gonna love this or they're gonna hate this, and like be prepared for them to hate it, and don't be afraid of them hating it, but hopefully they love it.
Yeah.
Just have
Listen,
like you just need something that that they'll love to put up after that in case it does bomb, or something that they'll love before that, so you go in with enough good favor where they're like, okay, yeah, this is funny. They've already told me they're funny. I can just give them the benefit of the doubt on this one.
yeah, same thing with stand up of kind of couching a newer joke in between more established jokes. So you kind of get them and then you can experiment, and if that doesn't go, you can still bounce back with the next bit.
Yeah, where the punchlines are, the tent poles in
Mhm.
it are.
I hear I'll get questions all the time from comics about wanting to write more and having that daily habit. So you read that book and you're a professional writer and you teach sketch comedy as well. What kind of tips do you have for people who want to write more and have the best intentions to, but still just aren't overcoming that hurdle?
Figure out a system to keep track of ideas. Like, I'll say this is that like in the creative industry, in anything creative, like imposter syndrome is very real. Like we all have it. You'd be surprised at like what levels people have that.
Mm-hmm.
And the only real way past that, and like when I say that, I mean like people. There's a lot of people out there who are like feel embarrassed if they do something because they're like, oh, I'm not that. Well, the only way past, like the only way past not being a comic or a sketch comedian is being a comic or being a sketch comedian. I remember back in the day when I was like starting out with Whitest Kids, thinking like, talking to like Eugene Merman and being like, oh, what's it like to be a comic? And he'd be like, no, you're a comic. I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. I was like, well, what's it like to be a paid comic? And he goes, you take more cabs. Uh, um,
Oh, that's great.
but yeah, but like yeah, and then like getting to that point where I realize that like, oh, people think of me as this, and realizing like, oh yeah, there's no like moment where you're like, you don't graduate into this thing. You just are. You just have to walk the walk. You just have to like do it. And practically what that means is like what I would say is figure out your system of keeping track of your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor had an album called Drunk Text to Myself. And that's because when he would get drunk, he would text himself ideas. That's what his system was. He
Mm-hmm.
would, there was periods where my system was like emailing myself with the subject line jokes. And then when I would sit down to write, I would search my Gmail for jokes and then see these, documents with like crazy ideas and it's like it's not that like any of them are good, it's that there's something there though, and those are like the nuggets that you can take. They're like like the hunks of clay you can take and you can mold into the thing that is the joke. And it doesn't matter if that stuff is good. It's probably bad. It's probably crazy. There's always stories that I hear from people who like are sketch writers. Like there's some like I would talk about with Trevor about like you'd wake up from a dream and you'd have a dream that you wrote the best sketch ever. Like your dream was you wrote the greatest sketch, and if you didn't like write it down right then, you would forget it. but there are those times where you'd like write it down and you would like read it the next day and be like, that's fucking crazy.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think both. Trevor had a dream that he actually like made as a sketch back when he was doing PAX TV, his show where was doing he was taking finding roadkill and doing Hamlet with it. And it was funny, it was like later I had a dream where it was Muppets doing Shakespeare.
Huh.
And so it's funny that we both were like in our dreams had this like Shakespeare crazy thing and just like no that seems but I mean it is the habit of like keeping track of your ideas. It's that fill books with like random things. People have good ideas all the time. It's just most of the time they're like, oh, well, that's nothing. I'm gonna throw that away.
Or they
That's
don't sit down and flesh it out.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
They don't
Yeah,
actually just show up to the page. I think a lot of times people maybe overcomplicate and think
yeah,
every time they sit down to write, they have to create something amazing. But most of
yeah,
it is just nonsense when you sit down to write.
yeah. Just make something. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and like you know, I notice with my sketch classes that like a lot of times, a lot of times that I like if I have like someone who is like green, who's like never written anything before, one of the things that I really have to get them past is they'll be swinging for the fences and they will be like, I need something that's so funny. And instead of trying to think of something that's funny, just something that they find funny, just one thing that they find funny and trying to like express that thing, they come in with this idea that starts at one place and it goes to this other thing and then there's this joke out of nowhere and all of a sudden they have this piece that's nothing because it's got too much going on. It's
Hmm.
all these things because they couldn't like commit to an idea and be confident about like, oh, this is the idea I'm trying to express. And so it's a lot to like, like convince someone like uh you're funny. You have found things funny in the past and you have been correct that those things are funny. And for you to be funny in a practical way, it's about like finding that thing that you think is funny and then expressing that one thing. And it might not be the best thing that's ever been written, but it's something funny and you can find something else funny. And like to not it's so much about like convincing someone like, hey, don't try and write something great, try and write something good.
Hmm.
Because greatness will be decided. Like greatness, like brilliance and inspiration, those things will occur and will kind of like you'll hit on something and you'll be like, oh, I am really enjoying this. And then you'll put that effort that makes that thing great into it that like really kind of brings that thing out. But like before you get there, it's just about doing that good thing and trying to do that good thing as best as you can do it.
And just the singular thing, almost like having a premise and just making it all around this premise as opposed to trying to bring in the whole kitchen sink. You have this
Yeah,
singular kernel, just build it around that world.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And once you kind of get used to that too, like that's the tricky thing is that like people, and especially like in my sketch classes, it's all like people think that I'm giving them rules. And I'm like, no, none of this is rules. That's the whole thing with comedy is there are not rules. There are guidelines. There are things
Mm-hmm.
that I have found to work and I will share that with you, these things that I've found to work, but I am by no chance saying like this is something you can do, this is something you can't do.
Mm-hmm. And that
Yeah.
you saying Shakespeare made me think of the Abraham Lincoln sketch that y'all did. So that sketch, for people who haven't seen it, you got to go watch it on YouTube. But so that has
Oh,
a
you
clear
gotta.
premise, basically around like, what if Abraham Lincoln died a different way than history told? Is that kind of where the idea started, and then y'all just kept building out around what if this or what if that based on this premise?
Well, the idea was sort of a novelty idea. I would say that is that was there were two sketches we wrote around that time. Abraham Lincoln being one of them, and the other one being the line leader sketch. I remember like we like kind of brainstormed those ideas. I think on the same night. But the thing, like the big kind of novelty with the ideas was that we would do something, like with Abraham Lincoln, we'd do it something that would start as a play on stage. Mind you, we're in a small, uh, live room in the back of a bar, and we're doing it on stage, and then the sketch would spill out into the audience, and you'd hear someone heckling the play from the back of the room. And so that was like the whole thing, was that like the tech booth for this room was in the very back of it. And so we'll have Zach in the tech booth doing something. And so we're like, all right, what's something that we can have going on stage? I don't know, a play. What's a play? Shakespeare. Okay, what's going on in Shakespeare? Who the fuck cares? Vampires? I don't know. Othello and Hamlet are doing some bullshit. I
Right.
don't know. That's funny. Uh, and then like, who interrupts it? Just someone who's like a loud talker in the theater. And it's funny. Uh, we have before the conversation about this sketch having a sort of racial connotations come up before,
Huh.
because of the sort of the stereotype of like the black theater goer talking in the movie theater. But the
Mhm.
funny thing, I gave it a lot of thought, and the funny thing about that is, mind you, we were all living in New York at the time, and the movie theater experience, that's what it was in New York, was like movie theaters, people would talk in the theater, and that's just like the way it was. And it wasn't like you'd be like, oh, like shut up. It was just like, all right, that's just like, this is, I'm in a very talkative theater tonight.
Mhm.
And so I think, like when someone brought that up, it was like kind of this thing of like, oh yeah, I guess that is a thing. Um, but yeah.
It's just more of who's a funny heckler, and then Abraham Lincoln is
And then
just I
like, yeah,
yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. It was like, what if someone was heckling the play? All right, well, who'd be funny? Abraham Lincoln, famously in a theater. Okay. And what if we had someone who was like getting in a fight with them like that's like a natural thing to that. All right, well, who would that be? Oh, well, what if that turns out to be John Wilkes Booth, and that turns out to be how that whole thing. And so it's like the sketch really presented itself from there. Like if you take it from that route of like, hey, let's do a sketch that takes place in a theater and use the whole like theater audience setting as the stage, it kind of naturally presents itself organically, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, and that really connects with me with you saying, try to write something good and then you may end up being great, because watching that sketch I'm like, "Oh, I bet they thought, oh, it would be funny if Abraham Lincoln died a different way." But it's fun to hear the actual kernel and premise was around, oh, a heckler at a play, and then from that premise you then heightened it to exaggerate and see what you could do with this. And that's more of a fun idea to me as well. Like, oh, there's a heckler. Okay, what's the setting? Who's doing it? What happens? That I like that organic route
Yeah.
to end up heightening to Abraham Lincoln, but it didn't start there. It had to start with, okay, here's a good idea about a heckler in the room. Now let's try to build on that. And it's just kind of building from that strong foundation.
Yeah. It's funny because,
Yeah.
like, that's where, like, pianos was where we learned how to write sketch. I mean, we were writing sketch in college and we were doing it, and some of the stuff we made in college made it to the TV show. But for the most part, I would say, like, pianos, that practice of, like, doing it in the room was where we, like, and you don't actively be like, oh, I've learned this lesson, oh, I'm going to put this in my pocket. You just kind of naturally kind of pick up on this stuff, and that's where we developed our style. And sort of, it's funny because you're also, like, as you go, like, creating terminology for things. We used to, like constantly talk about tentpole sketches of, like, needing them per show, of, like, being like, all right, yeah, we're gonna need this. And then, like, but that concept is something that exists everywhere. Like, we were when we were doing like, when we were starting out, a big part of our style of, like, creating was, like, just doing brainstorms in meetings. It was just like, hey, let's sit and, like, let's brainstorm ideas for a while, write stuff down on paper, and then let's, like, like, writers room style, like, go around and read out our ideas. And when we first started doing that, it was not productive at all, because someone would read an idea and someone else would be sitting there and go, no, that's not funny.
Mm.
And after a while, we were like, hey, all right, here's the rule. Don't say anything about the sketch unless you're adding to it. And instantly, we were, like, writing stuff, we were hitting stuff, we were getting, like, someone would say something and it would be a not funny idea, an idea that, like, just, like, wouldn't work. And then someone would be like, what if that was this? And then someone else would be like, oh yes, that is funny. And then that would develop into this bigger idea. And we would, all of a sudden, would do these brainstorming sessions, and we would get these great ideas that, like, three people would kind of have a major part in it. And we were like, oh, this is great. This is such a good way to come up with comedy. We're brilliant for thinking of this idea of looking at someone else's idea, and just, instead of saying no, we just say yes. And
Yeah.
we did it, guys. We invented
Groundbreaking.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's getting out of your own head, and that's a great way to get out of your own way. Just like people not writing more because they're negating any possibility to find something funny just by the sheer mentality they're approaching the creative process with.
Totally. Or, like, you could be negating someone else's
Right. Exactly.
process. Like that, like,
Mm-hmm.
you could be like, I don't see it. And just by saying that, there could be someone who's, like, just about to say a great idea. And then it's just like, oh no, I guess my idea is stupid. And I think that's the thing that, like, it's, like, tough for people to learn, is that, like, the way you feel about a great idea is often shame. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like the best ideas I've come up with, I've pitched in a way where I've been like, people are going to hate this. People
Mm.
are going to be upset that I said this, and they're going to make me leave the room. And I just think there's something funny about, like, the way we approach things, where I honestly think it has to do with, if we genuinely find something funny, we're afraid people are going to reject it, because then people will be rejecting us. And if we don't think something's funny, if you're like, hey, give me an idea, and I'm like, like, space dragons that got boobs, and I'm like, and you don't like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's because space dragons that have boobs is a dumb idea that I just came up with right now. But if I, like, spent all this time on an idea and I brought it into you, and it was like this, like, idea I really liked, I'd probably be like, yeah, this is stupid. Let's not read my idea. It's stupid, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So like good ideas feel bad, and like often, we need a helpful creative environment to help us feel safe enough to present those. And that's, I think, one of the strong things that I had with, like with Whitest Kids, was like just a place where I knew I could say something and people would not assume I'm, uh, you know, just a horrible person who, is just very stupid and worthless. And, because like there's plenty of me thinking that right now, that like,
Right, 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 right. Yeah,
that
yeah.
I should just, just kind of just go sit in a corner somewhere and let life happen and be like, all right, I've done enough, I'm out. But so I think that like that's the great thing about sketch, is that it does sort of provide those rooms for people, and those places for people to like see potential in these things and to help bring it out of each other. Because sorry, I am rambling on and on about like
No,
different,
you're the
but
guest. I'm learning from you, Sam. This is all relevant.
uh,
Don't worry.
I
Ever since you said dragons with boobs, you're like, oh, I should have done that. We should start
yeah,
over.
yeah, yeah. Can we cut this out? Can we cut this
Yeah.
out? Wait, this is live? Oh no!
It was live.
Uh,
I had to end it because you said that. It's over now,
oh,
but
YouTube got involved. Oh,
no, this is all relevant. You're being very helpful, Sam. It's all yeah. You're
yeah.
right on point here, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like that thing. Like, I feel like with Whitest Kids, I mean, like, not to say anything about like the successes that anyone had, but I truly do think it was a thing where, we were a Voltron. We were a thing where the whole was greater than the parts,
Hmm.
and or at least there was something special about the whole, and something special about those five voices coming together and making the stuff that they made. And I think anything that's like creative, you'll get like some version of the 80/20 rule, which is like 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And I think you could look at Whitest Kids and be like, like, oh yeah, like Trevor did all the work. But like I think it was like, there's definitely something about Trevor working with all of us that like, Trevor definitely was like the leader within the group. But uh I there was just, I think, something, not to be like grandiose about this thing that I did, but there was definitely something I thought that was like really special about the group of five people that made the thing that we made. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's weird, and it's beautiful, and it's flawed, and uh, but like, yeah, and that's part of the thing I love about sketch comedy, is that like that's what it's a platform for, is like a group voice, is
Yeah,
like,
and you got to
yeah,
think with social media, it's more accessible than ever now as well,
yeah,
and anyone can learn sketch comedy and just pick up a phone and in a month be the next biggest name in comedy. If it plays out in a certain way,
yeah,
if they're creating shareable content and whatnot. And I did see you
yeah. If you get,
collaborated. Yeah.
if you get a certain president elected, yeah, you could be a
Yeah.
big name in comedy.
you
Yeah,
can you can do a certain impression. You could just blow up just on that.
yeah, yeah,
But Riley Galvin asked in the live chat about your sketch with Almost Friday TV, who is like a younger generation. These guys built this whole social media platform, and now they're just huge. And you got to work with them. So, like, any cool memories of
yeah.
that experience? Or
What was so funny about that was, I got funny to me was like, I got a message from Dan Saint Germain, who I know from New York,
Mm-hmm.
and he was working with Tyler Falbo from Almost Friday, who directs a lot of their stuff, and they like he mentioned that he knew me, and so he was like, "Hey, can I, connect you guys?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And Tyler was like, "Hey, do you want to do a sketch?" And I did not know Almost Friday, but I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be in your sketch.
Yeah.
I like Dan, sure." And so then like it's that thing where I'm like not really thinking about it, and it's the day before the shoot, and I get an email, and it's like, "All right, hey, here's your call sheet." And I was like, "Oh, cool. This is like a real thing. They got call sheets. Cool." Like I was like, honestly, like fine with showing up and it being like, "All right, this is my roommate's camera," and
Right, 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 right,
that
right.
kind of thing. And I walk in, and they were like the guys all there, and I was like, so what's tell me about your group. And they were like, yeah, we were all like doing stuff on social media, and this company found us, and they got us all together and like made us like a group together. And I was like, oh, so you're like a boy band? And they're like, yeah, I guess we're like a, I guess. I was like, all right, cool, boy band. Uh, and I was like, and I came in and I was like, so let me tell you a thing or two about like I remember just like being like, all right, yeah, this is cute, this little thing that you're trying here. And but then like the sketch is like a really funny sketch. I really dug the
Uh-huh.
sketch and had a blast doing it. And they were like talking about sketch, and like they're it's like that thing where someone speaks the same language, like
Mhm.
they're talking about like the turn and stuff like that. And there I remember there was this thing where in the sketch, if you haven't seen it, it's like uh this guy is like, oh, my dad will buy us beer, and then the dad buys beer for all the guy and his friends, and then just like hangs out with them and is like makes things real awkward real fast. uh, and then at the end of the sketch, the guy's like, "Oh, sorry about my dad," and everyone's like, "Yeah, that was awesome." And the guy's like, "What?" Like kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
as you would expect. And we shot the end of it, and I think it was Liam's sketch, Liam Cullen, and he was like, "Oh, why don't like at the end here." Uh, Angus, like, why don't you just like, instead of being like, what, do like a, yeah, my dad's pretty cool. Like do that kind of thing. And it was like, yeah, that's how you end the sketch. The
Uh-huh.
audience is looking for the character to be embarrassed. The audience is, and it's like that sort of like talking about the math and the sort of turn and on your toes, like realizing like, oh yeah, this is the natural way this is heading. Let's do a 180 on that, and it's like that was great. And then all of a sudden the sketch came out, and they had like like instantly it was like like all like my like little cousins and stuff were like, hey, I saw you do something finally. And I was like, oh,
Hilarious.
oh, these guys have millions of followers, and
Huge,
uh
dude.
these guys are
Huge.
huge. But
Yeah.
it's great because like it is I love that it's like they're they're talking the talk. They're you look at their sketches, and there's a kind they're playing with structure and expectation, and that's what I get excited about. I'm gonna actually I was expecting to talk about this, but I'm gonna go into it now that we're talking about it. Is Everyone's been talking about this SNL thing uh, lately. Is they do a monkey sketch that's very similar to a space monkey sketch that we did, and
Oh.
everyone's like, "Oh, SNL ripped you off," and it's like it's not the first time that we've had that conversation, like that, like, "Oh, SNL has ripped us off," and throughout the years, I've like come to grips with the fact that like someone's going to come up with an idea similar to an idea that you've done, and like that's just going to happen, and it's fine. They're like, you know, and the bummer I think for where we're at is that like, oh yeah, SNL is such a whale. Like it is such like has so many eyes on it. It's like, okay, like, and you just at some point have to be like, and like, it's exciting that like it brings attention to the original sketch, which I think is really good. But I remember watching their version of the sketch, and like no knock to the writer of that sketch, but there was a period, a moment. Have you seen the sketch? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't seen it.
So yeah, it's like this space monkey thing. We have a similar space monkey thing, and there was a point at of their sketch where I was like, "Hats off, they did it better," and and then it never quite took that like structured turn that I wanted it to take, and I got like a little like frustrated with it. And that's, I mean, I think I watch SNL in a like a very like the way that like, and not again, I when I get like talking about comedy, I get like I feel like I sound like such an asshole. Like, but like I feel like I watch SNL like how like Tony Dungy or someone watches a football game, how
Uh,
Tony Romo watches a football game, where I'm like trying to be like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do when you're in that position, you got to do this, and just like, but part of me is just like, oh, I wish I was in there playing, uh,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, I have no ill feelings to anyone of the that was involved in the SNL sketch or like and like I'm not like oh my there's definitely bigger fish to fry than SNL doing a similar sketch to a 10-year-old Whitest Kids sketch
Do you think they
or
took the idea?
15. No, no,
No.
I think
Parallel thought.
you parallel thought. I think one of the things is that like one of the things that people are like, this is a smoking gun, is that the monkey in their sketch is called Beppo, and the monkey in our sketch is called Bobo. Yeah, it's a monkey name. Like, make a
Hmm.
list of monkey names and try and not have a name close to Bobo or Beppo on it.
You're giving them a lot of
Uh,
credit. Uh,
I don't
I'll have
know.
to compare and contrast them. Yeah, I don't
Fair,
know.
yeah, yeah. Check it out. But like, just
But
know,
you're the
like, I'm
originator, so you would
happy.
know more than I would.
I'm happy that our sketch is our sketch, and I think that they, their sketch is great, and but there is part of me that while watching it was like, oh, they missed this turn here that would have created more conflict and had more of a direct comedic payoff.
Uh-huh. So is that and Alyssa in the live chat was talking about when she took a class with you, you were teaching them about like naming the game of the sketch. So are these like phrases within like the structure of a set like or of a sketch, the game, the turn, is these kind of like tent poles you have within a sketch?
Yeah, I mean, like the game is like like we like when the game we kind of picked up from UCB, but we're like playing with it, like before, I talk about like this whole like vocabulary of stuff. There isn't like a book of terminology that you need to get down. It's sort of like the words that sort of uh, you know do the job of describing the thing. It's not like anyone can be like, "Hey, you use the term of the game wrong," But like,
Oh yeah, we've had other
um,
comedians reference the game as well. It's a common term, but it's a very powerful
yeah,
tool.
but like the game, we would go back to like what we were saying earlier about having that like one thing, and I think that's an important thing with sketches, realizing that like people are looking for that thing that this thing is about. And, you don't have to like necessarily play ball. You don't necessarily have to like cater to that 100%, but you have to accept that people are looking for that. And like you will put people at ease if you're like, hey, this is what we're doing. And if people can see where the joke's coming from, they're more likely to like buy into what you're doing because no one wants to laugh at the wrong thing.
Hmm. So, as we get ready to land the plane here, I think we would be remiss if you have any closing advice for the next generation of comedians and creators out there of kind of what you've learned that maybe you could bestow upon the next generation to help us keep comedy getting better and better and just moving the medium forward.
Say, figure it out. Like that sounds like I'm being asked. Like, come on, guys,
Yeah,
fucking figure
figured.
it out, okay? Fucking, can you guys like just like fucking get your shit together? No,
Yeah.
no.
Get over yourselves
Fi-
and just do the work. Yeah.
Figure it out though. Like honestly, figure it out any way you can. Like, don't look for the path that's already been paved, and look for that place where you can express yourself. Uh, and I see people all the time coming up with like, you'll see people being like, oh, like I'm going to start, no one does this kind of sketch on TikTok. Okay, I'm going to start doing that. And look for those opportunities to like be like, all right, this is how I'm going to express a joke, and don't wait for someone to establish that. Look for just your opportunities to get those eyes on you and to do it, and like do it and develop it. And you might not initially be rewarded for it, but that's I remember when we were doing it with Whitest Kids, when we were like at the point where we were about to like sell our show, we were like, oh, it's crazy if this works out, because like like everyone talks about paying your dues, and we haven't really paid our dues at all. And it's like, thinking back to that, it's like, no, we were a college sketch group for 3 years doing live shows and putting that work in without any sort of reward. And then we were doing free shows at a bar every week for 3 years before that. Like, that is what paying your dues is. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those shows were like, people weren't there and weren't going to them, but then eventually we got a crowd and we got people going, and that's that is that reward. And that is what I'm saying, like, figure it out. It's like, bet on yourself in that way of like, I can, my work has value, and I can like make it good enough. I don't have to just, there is this thing where when you come up with something funny, you're like, oh man, that's so funny because I came up with it. Don't, no one wants, like, never make comedy from the place that you think people want to laugh at you. Always make it from that place where you assume everyone hates you. Uh, because look, how many times have you been at a sketch show and been like if you like, we're all comedy people here. There's like, I mean, I guess maybe some people are not, but like, there's so many times that I find myself at a comedy show and I'm thinking, well, I hope this doesn't take long, and that might be a great show. That show might be amazing. I might laugh at something at that show like I've never laughed before, but I'm always going into it with that, I hope this doesn't, like, and like, if someone is like, oh, I can't wait for this, let's see what they got, like, great, awesome. But chances are they're not that. And you got to figure out how to make those people laugh. That's what it is. And this is sorry, I'm stretching this out so much. I'll say this too, is like we're known for being sort of offensive and edgy, and offensive and edgy has become this sort of like divisive like place that in comedy lately, and I think really the thing is that like again, if that's who you want to be, don't just be that. Figure it out. Like figure out how to do that thing and to get people to laugh. Like
Hmm.
I've definitely, as a sketch teacher, have people come in and like pitch a sketch, and I go, well, like that's kind of sexist, or like that's kind of racist. That's probably going to rub people the wrong way, and they're like, what the fuck? Why can't I do that? And it's like, well, because you haven't figured it out. Like you haven't figured out how to say what you're saying without making it come off as racist or come off as offensive to people. And that, you know, that is going to make people not want to laugh.
So is it just figuring out if it's initially racist or sexist? How do you then kind of walk that line where it's still funny?
You figure out what detail, like if it something that like hopefully at its core you're not trying to be racist or sexist.
Uh huh.
And so you have to figure out like how to make sure your perspective is clear, and how to make sure that people can go, oh, that joke is sort of maybe, I came from an era where like the 2000s, I think a huge thing in the 2000s was ironic sexism, ironic homophobia, ironic misogyny. And the problem is that now stuff's not that clearly ironic anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people are just like a lot more okay with being like in the mid 2000s people were like, at least, like as far as they were presenting, we're like, hey guys, we all agree that like racists suck, right? And people were like, yeah. And it's like, well, so I'm going to make this joke. Like I remember David Cross, he said the N word on his album, the sh- "Shut Up You Fucking Babies," I think was the album.
Hmm.
Um, do you remember that with that? But and it was like he goes in the middle of the album, he goes, you know what I hate, and then he just says the N word,
Oh.
and he goes, can you imagine? Can you imagine if I took that turn at this point? Can you imagine if I did that for real? Like that was the point of the joke.
Whoa.
And yeah, but and that was like sort of the thing was like, whoa, he like went in there heavy. He went in there hard.
Yeah.
And I think at that time we could laugh at that. But like I think now you just people are like more emboldened in their prejudices, that there isn't as much apparent irony to this stuff. So you need to figure out where to like make that clear and how to
Mm.
make that clear. And like it's not always just like doing the thing of like, oh, there's some guy, like if you're making a sketch, it's not always just having another person be like, hey, you can't say that. It's like really figuring out what you're trying to say and where you're trying to say the humor is, and not just being like, oh, we just did the naughty thing.
Yeah, and having that pure intention, like you said, making sure it's
Yeah.
very clear your intention is not to
Yes.
you believe this like crazy thing that people may be trying to misinterpret.
It's funny. Can I? Do we have time for me to keep going on
Yeah,
this?
yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
Uh, uh, is I not to like talk about. I try not to be too specific about anything that's happened in class, but I remember I had someone in class who had something that would like came off as homophobic in a sketch. It was one of their first sketches, and they said, uh, and it's not. I don't get like upset that like people make a joke and it comes off as homophobic. It's what's frustrating is like when you're like, hey, that comes off as homophobic, and they go, well, it's not. That's not what I was trying to do, and that's like, and they get defensive, and instead of like just like trying to see what the like, because I'm not, yeah, I don't know, I do like it if people are not being homophobic, but also at the same time I'm trying, like the thing I'm trying to stick to is like, this is what, like, try and say something and be clear about what you're saying, and right now it's a little not clear for me.
Hmm.
um
And you
But
have to
so,
keep.
anyway, so this person did something that was like a little like homophobic. It did not go over well, and it was a big class, and sometimes you never know how the conversations are going. Luckily, like this was a really supportive class that like people were like, hey, yeah, it's just not funny. It's just like it really like the joke doesn't play. It's kind of tired. It's not like anything that feels new. It's just kind of, like it just doesn't play. And then the next person was a trans woman in my class, sitting and I sitting in front of like the trans flag, the trans pride flag, um, and she did like felt nervous about reading her sketch in class. And she was like, "Can we not?" And I was like, "No, no, no, we should read your sketch." And she was like, "Well, maybe I should," because like part of what I was saying was like, no one knows who wrote the sketch, and so they want like, when you're watching a sketch, you want to invest in that person. You want it like, and sometimes if you get the vibe that you're like, oh, I don't really like this person, you might be less likely to laugh at it and less open to laugh at it. So this person was like, I was thinking about what you were saying about not knowing who wrote the sketch, and so I feel weird about reading the sketch. And I was like, no, 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 let's read it. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. And then they read the sketch, or we had people read the sketch, and uh, it was this sketch about a TSA agent complaining about trans rights in bathrooms and doing that whole thing, and like, and uh, a TSA agent while frisking someone and like being like so over the top, like, all right, spread your butt cheeks, being like, yeah, and I just can't, like what if those
Right,
people
right,
are in the
right, right.
bath like this? And the class, it was great, it went over great, and it's the perspective was like so clear with what they were saying, and the context was there, and it was like night and day from the other sketch, and it was a very nice moment. I don't know, like it was very like one of those funny. It also it's takes it out of you to have these like conversations where you're like, all right, like we're gonna spend half a class talking about this one joke, and like some people are gonna get so into it, and like it'll be like such of like a whale of a thing. And I honestly like both ways. I'm just trying to like come out of it where people just are like more kind of aware of themselves, but
Hmm.
it was such a great moment where the um, the trans woman sketch like really showed everyone like, oh, that's a very clear sketch that talks about a topic that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but has a airtight perspective and is done in a very like gettable way. And like as evidence, the fact that like I'm just able to like blurt out what their sketch was, and you can
Hmm.
instantly see that. So,
Yeah,
so yeah,
yeah.
to just figure it out. Like that was someone who figured out their sketch,
And
And if people are like, hey, that's fucked up, figure it out.
and
It's
you have to
like
be open to
that.
hearing that too, and not be like,
Yeah,
oh, they're just being
totally.
sensitive. They don't get comedy. If you're gonna play that game, you got to be willing to,
Yeah,
accept the consequences of it as well, or empathize with people who may get
yeah.
upset about it, and work on getting the joke better, and not just getting bitter about it.
Yeah, people think that people getting bitter about something you said is like an affront to their freedom of speech. No, it's not an affront to the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech means they are free to feel however they feel
Yeah.
about what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I I really liked what Anthony Jeselnik said on the topic, where he in an interview, not the thing that he wrote recently, but like in a separate interview, he was like, "Yeah, these all these comics are like, hey, if you don't like it, then get the fuck out." And it's like, I'm sorry, dude, but that's not the job. The job is to make people laugh. If people aren't laughing at your joke, you're not doing the job.
Uh-huh. Yep. Big facts.
Yeah.
And Dubs General asked if that sketch would have been considered homophobic if the person wasn't trans that created the joke.
No, I think the
I don't
perspective
think so.
was clear. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think yeah, I don't think yeah. I agree with that. It's just it was actually well done in a way, like you said, it had a funny context and a funny game, veiled in this more social commentary of someone being transphobic.
Yeah.
As just a character in the sketch. That wasn't almost the punchline, I guess.
I mean, I we did the sketch, the gay football league, and I think that sketch is we land that joke, and uh, none of us are 100% gay in Whitest Kids. You know, I think we're probably all 40% gay, but you know, uh, just
As a collective or each? Is it you add
each.
up
I
to
would say each
40%?
one of us is 40% gay.
Oh,
Each
okay,
one
okay,
of us in Whitest Kids.
okay.
Um,
Oh man. Yeah, this was great. I feel like there's so much more in like the sketch. Like you said, the turn and the structure of a sketch and things that I think we can definitely get into, and I think people can. I'm assuming in your class you probably get into like the structural formatting and things.
Yeah, that's the
So,
first. I have three classes now that I teach. I have the first class is the main focus is about structure and about like talking about different types of structure, and I really think that like structure is the not to sounds like I'm mixing that, but like structure is the foundation of sketch comedy and everything. Like once you get structure, you kind of can like play off that. And like really what structure is knowing what people are expecting and writing to that. And so it's funny, like actually this week or tonight I have class, and what we're going over is it's like the week 7 class of the 8 week class, and tonight we're
oh,
doing the outside of the box sketch. So basically in all the classes I do structure, and then right before the end I go, all right, now let's do like be crazy with it. Because all the times I get people who are like, oh, I'm going to be crazy with it from the get-go, and it's like, no, just like I know you might hate it, but just play the structure game so that when we get later on into it you can see what it's like to play without structure.
mm-hmm. And kind of learning the rules before you break them.
Exactly, yeah.
Ooh. Well, where can people, if they want to sign up for one of your classes or connect with you, what's the best place to do that? And I'll be sure to link it in the show notes as well.
You can email me at info@sambrownuniversity.com, or you could go to sambrownuniversity.com and sign up for my mailing list there. And then I will, when I'm about to offer classes, actually, I'm about to send this out. Now is actually a really great time to sign up for this because I'm about to have some Black Friday deals.
Oh, nice.
Uh, and yeah, and offering. The next group of classes is going to start in 2025 in January, and yeah, so SamBrownUniversity.com. Um, email me at info@SamBrownUniversity.com, and you can also get merch. I got merch. It looks like a real college.
Very nice. And for people that
Very
want to
stupid.
dive more into the Whitest Kids You Know, there are clips online. And on December 3rd, they're doing like a marathon on Shout TV to where you can go dive in to the whole world there as well.
Dec- December 8th, we're doing the marathon on Shout
December
TV.
8th.
Top
Oh,
10 episodes.
okay.
December 3rd, our box set's being released.
Oh,
Our box
very
set of
cool.
all 5 seasons of Whitest Kids You Know will be released. For the first time ever, we're having a box set
Congratulations. That's so cool, man.
on, thank you. It's, on digital video disc. It's coming out on digital video disc.
That's DVD for all you kids out there.
DVD.
Yes, December 3rd, the box set is coming out, and then December 8th, there will be a marathon on Shout TV. And then, of course, go check out Sam's classes. This is one of the best in the biz. And I know when I just started posting you were on here, going to be on here, people were elated, and you had students in the live chat here talking about how amazing your classes are and
Oh,
just what an amazing time it was to even get you on this show, because you really do share that same spirit we have here at Hot Breath of comics helping comics and putting in the work as well. You know, that's a
yeah.
big part of this as well. So,
This was really fun for me. I hope I didn't talk too much.
no, you did great. And we appreciate everyone for watching live. We do these live streams every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join our email list, linked in the show notes, to where I send you weekly updates on these live streams and other Hot Breath happenings we have. And until next Tuesday, we'll see y'all next week. Bye. Bye, y'all.